Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Podcast The Storm. We're social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all around nerds convene talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka Dustin Kidder, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, everyone. Do not adjust your computers. We are back so soon, but that's because we are now resuming your regularly scheduled Podcast of the Storm schedule. And therefore, it's Sunday, and here we are.
And I am your host, Lifetime More Wannabe, the brainstorm of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight? Hello, Dragon Tail, as he says, hello, Viet, I mean internet. I've never actually seen that movie, I'll be fully honest.
Yet another thing I'm gonna have to tie you into a chair to force you to watch someday.
But yeah, we're sort of playing. I mean, it's sort of catch up, but also just the stuff that's happened this week.
Yeah, because we missed 2 weeks, and apparently those 2 weeks just decided to dump all the things on us. So we actually have enough from this week alone that most of next week is filled already.
So shall we move on to the first topic of the night, which is I would say a surprising return.
Yeah, a very nostalgic greetings to the stupidity of the Mary Sue.
Yeah.
For a while there, the Mary Sue was basically our channel's nemesis, and it just so happened that their level of stupidity kept metastasizing to other places, and we haven't returned to the Mary Sue in a while. Also, the Mary Sue went on a kick of covering mostly IRL news things that didn't really have anything to do with pop culture, but they're back to their old ways, and so are we.
But yeah, this is Mary Sue. I can't remember the last time we covered them, to be fully honest.
I want to say it was a reaction to a Princess Weeks video. It was the one about the boys and Invincible and nihilism and Hobbes versus Rousseau and shit, I think.
Oh, and yeah, My Hero Academia was in there as well. You ever finish that?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so yeah. This is written by Julia Glassman and published April 14th, 2023. I don't think we ever covered anything from Miss Glassman.
I don't think so either. I think it's there have been 3 writers that we've returned to a couple of times. Rachel Leishman is the worst of them, and consequently also the one we've covered the most. Then there's Princess Weeks, who is mostly reasonable, but still warped by her feminist framework. And then there's the other one whose name I don't remember, who was mostly notable for being the pagan contributor to the Mary Sue, I do believe, because she kept coming up in all the like holiday-based articles and stuff.
Right, I think we only covered like a few from Pros, so I can't remember her name much. But yeah, Peach's character in the Super Mario Brothers movie is an all too common sexist trope. I haven't. Okay, so full disclosure, I have not seen the Super Mario Brothers movie. Don't really plan on to because I just nothing really grabbed me with it.
Mm-hmm. I saw it. There's literally nothing wrong with Peach whatsoever. Yes, she's a capable female character, but it never approaches my patriarchy or my feminist framework bullshit. And she's not a Mary Sue. She just happens to be competent.
I guess the question also is she competent at the expense of of the characters?
No, she just happens to be good at operating in the Mushroom Kingdom because she was raised there and she's a monarch.
Right. That was just that wasn't a concern of mine.
Yeah. If there's any one-upping of Mario at all, it's because it's literally his first day in the Mushroom Kingdom, whereas she is its monarch and also has experience there. Duh.
Yeah. Shall
Hmm.
we?
Moving forward.
The Super Mario Brothers movie tries to portray Princess Peach as a badass instead of the helpless damsel in distress in the original Mario Brothers movie. I mean,
You do realize that people can both be vulnerable to other things and also capable, right? Like
also
that.
depending. Okay, well, she said original, so never mind. I was gonna say like in other games she's been pretty cool and badass. So
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not like we haven't gotten Action Peach before in various games or in Super Smash Brothers. So, and let's be entirely fair. If they portrayed Peach as a damsel in distress entirely, the feminists would have lost their freaking minds. Granted, that would have been amusing, but I get why, rather than having Mario save Peach in this version, he's saving his brother. It makes a certain level of sense, and it's also a thing that's happened before in the games. There was a time when they started sort of rotating the roster of people who Mario saved. So it's not it's not out of left field or woke or ideological or anything. So it's
uh,
fine.
hello, Jonah Arts. Good to see you.
It's been a minute.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Moving
Hmm.
on. We find out that she completed the obstacle course on her first try. She formed a plan to recruit the Kong army to South Valley as she rides a motorcycle. Right.
God forbid a female character could be capable without viscerally hating men or whining about the patriarchy every 5 minutes.
Central, I'm glad to hear otherwise, but I was worried it's going to be Peach's strong woman showing up the Mario Brothers the whole time.
Yeah, I think we were all worried, but Nintendo apparently insisted on de-wokifying the thing because apparently Illumination or the people behind the movie actually wanted to do the, you know, let Peach one up everyone thing, and Nintendo insisted on uh, on scaling it down so that she was still a likable character. Thank God
The
for Nintendo, I guess.
uh, Jonah was working on their comic and tabletop RPGs. Hope it's going well for you on that. Me and Don both know how comics are.
Mhm.
All right, I'll read that in a second, Jensen. I just want to get through this next paragraph. After my family and I left the theater, though, something about peace didn't sit right with us. Even aside from the Brothers movies, many problems, we realized that we'd all seen this character trope before, and it's just as problematic in this film as it is everywhere else. Okay.
Okay, I'm curious which trope we're talking about because you would think that this would please the Mary Sue, but then again, like I say, it doesn't defer to any feminist talking points or feminist frameworks throughout the movie. And I'm gonna hazard a guess that that's the real reason they're mad, is because the movie actually manages to deliver a three-dimensional, hyper-capable, strong, actually strong female character without framing it in social justice terminology or social justice woo. And that
Yeah,
should be forbidden according to the Mary Sue, I guess.
in that intro, there's one way that while they would still screech, it wouldn't make sense to a lot of people who didn't see it. Half Beat Street captured, but the sabotaging Bowser from the inside with things like leaving clues, planting doubts and false information, etc. Yeah, could be cool. Anyway, a badass female sidekick and the average male lead. Okay.
Okay, so which way do we switch this to make it work? Do we make the male lead more capable than the female lead? Because I suspect that would be misogynist. Do we make the female character not a badass? Because that would also be misogynist. Do we make her a damsel in distress like she was originally? Because that would also, according to you, be misogyny. So which way do we switch it, Marisu, to make you happy? Because they're just I'm trying to think of all the ways we could possibly do this do this storyline, and this one is the one I would have sworn would have made you happy, and you're still upset. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Way back in my grad school days when I was earning an MFA in fiction, one of our professors told us to avoid a common problem in our storytelling. This problem starts with a female character. Everything about her, her smarts, her strength, her ability, seems to set her up to take the lead in the story. Suddenly, though, a guy swoops in out of nowhere and takes the job away from her. She is infinitely more qualified than he is, but for some mysterious reason, she can't be allowed to do it herself. His job is to train and support him instead. I mean, you got mentors for a reason.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact of okay, so am I to understand this correctly? Is that a categorical admission on your part, writer of this article, that you will only be happy if female characters that are in any way competent or capable are necessarily the main character of the story? Is that where we're going? And also, I just want to point this out for the 100th time in a row, but this is a perfect example of why fiction degrees and writing degrees and all the fancy degrees in the world in relation to the topic of storytelling are not just bullshit, but are actively counterproductive. Because if we believe this story that she is telling, which I have no reason to disbelieve what she is saying. If we believe the story that she is telling us, this was something that was said to her by one of her teachers in a storytelling and fiction degree. Do we yet see what drives me so up the wall over modern artistic approaches? The obsession with everything must be a means to an end, everything must be hyper focused on in like socio-political gobbledygook rather than, character consistency, in universe logic, characters being individualistic entities in their own right. Any of this ringing a bell? No, because a female character is in the female demographic. She has to somehow be the avatar of all womankind, and therefore you can't make a female character interesting because any kind of interestingness you give her would detract from the sanctity of all womankind. And of course, the perfect Mary Sues who can do no wrong are not interesting because they don't resonate as individual characters in their own right. They resonate only as ideological avatars. And people don't like seeing ideological avatars in a otherwise self-contained freaking story. Moving on.
The fact that we had to be warned off of this trope in a fiction workshop shows how easy it is to fall into. Thanks to sexism, both storytellers and audiences are trained to see men as the only candidates for heroism. Who
No.
the fuck thinks that? Like, seriously, who the fuck thinks like that? I want concrete goddamn evidence on that.
Yeah, I need actual empirical examples because they don't exist, my dear. Men are seen as the heroes largely because your average hero has to prove themselves whereas your average female character is seen as perfect and morally benevolent and flawless in all ways, and therefore it's very hard to make a female character the main character because women are seen as more morally pure than men, and men are always seen as needing to prove themselves in some way. And lest you call that misogyny, let me point this out to you. And this one is as old as people replying to Ingrid Sarkeesian when she brought up this point. But nevertheless, Mario is the main character of the story, but his goal is the safety of Princess Peach. Meaning that Princess Peach is the driving force of the plot because her safety is paramount. Which means that poor Mario can literally gallivant from castle to castle and fight all sorts of monsters. Mind you, that usually this isn't even his dimension. So he's fighting otherworldly, monsters and demons and shit, all for the safety of this one female character, who sometimes doesn't even reply to his advances. So he can literally move the earth for her, and she can still sometimes turn him down, according to the ending of some of the games. And this, you want to say, implies misogyny, rather than ever implying misanthropy or misandry. Okay. Moving on.
Where we see this trope, we can find variations of it in A Few Good Men, when the case Joanne wants to give is given to Daniel, and by the end Joanne acts as his uncritical cheerleader. Ratatouille, in which Colette has to play second fiddle to Linguini, although cheerleads credit Linguini doesn't as his leader.
Okay, fuck you, both Linguini and Colette, and basically all the human characters in Ratatouille, take second fiddle position to Remy because it's Remy's goddamn story. And Remy is, the focus is somewhat on Linguini because Remy chooses Linguini to basically be his, his beard, more or less. What the honest fuck? How can you look at Ratatouille and not tell that it's Remy's story, not Linguini's or Colette's or even Skinner's? Motherfuckers. There's more time spent with Gusteau's ghost in Ratatouille than there is with Linguini, Colette, Ego, or Skinner. But that's a complete and utter sidebar. Moving on.
And the Lego Movie, which comments on the trope, but still relies on it. Filmmakers have tried to subvert the trope in various ways, but all too many of them can't bring themselves to just chuck it entirely.
Again, because you want someone in the supporting cast to know what they're fucking doing, and most often, the character that the audience relates to, again, in general, there are exceptions, but in general, is the character who actually has to learn and improve on something. It's basic, Joseph Campbell hero's journey bullshit. Granted, I wish we could get more stories that involved characters that weren't fucking idiots. And on that point, I guess I agree with you. But my issue is there are just as many hyper-capable male side characters that don't get the spotlight because we're focused more on the more quote-unquote human, parentheses, incompetent character. Like, Gandalf is the best character in Lord of the Rings. Yoda is the best character in Star Wars. Except for maybe Mother Tells It. Mr. Miyagi is the best character in the Karate Kid franchise, and on and on and on we could go. And all those characters are male, but they have the same trope you're talking about, where they are the ones who are hyper capable, and yet we're stuck following this random schmuck who needs to learn shit. And again, there's a reason for that, because basic hero's journey bullshit. But if your argument is we should focus more on hyper-capable characters because hyper-capable characters could easily make main character status, then I'm going to have to point out to you that that is not a gendered phenomenon. There are just as many, if not more, male hyper-capable characters who get sidelined because we're focusing on the audience point of view character who is often going through some kind of character development. Moving on.
Mhm. The trope in Super Mario Bros. Is the most glaring in the Donkey Kong scene. Each trait is much more nimble and capable than Mario from the start. And Mario is the one who volunteers to fight Donkey Kong. Why? Because he's Mario. Princesses are for saving. Oh my god.
He couldn't ever be doing something because he's trying to be selfless, could he? He couldn't ever be trying to spare the energies and efforts of the female character by putting himself on the line, could he? And again, this is yet another reason why I always hated Anita Sarkeesian's take on the Mario games as well as I'm hating this take on the movie. The reason why Mario is the main character is because we follow him as the fish out of water in the Mushroom Kingdom because we ourselves are fish out of waters in the Mushroom Kingdom, at least at first. And also, most of what Mario does is meant to spare Peach some kind of trial, whether it be effort of actually doing shit herself or whether it be saving her ass. And yet somehow you can look at a male character's entire well-being being selflessly placed on the line for a female character and call it not misanthropic because it demonizes both the roles of men and women, not misandrist because again it basically results in a male character putting his entire humanity on the line for a female character. But no, you call it misogynist because that results in the female character not doing anything. Or something. God damn it. And yet, if Peach was the main character and she got hurt, that would also count as misogynist. Because that's the thing. Sometimes male characters are the main characters simply because in the human subconscious, men are okay to see hurt. We don't like seeing women be hurt, and that's why women are often the moral center, whereas male characters are the center of action and agency because they're the ones who can be expendable enough to suffer at the whim of the audience. Moving on.
Look, I know the movie's based on the games, and the games have certain plot points that Nintendo doesn't want anyone messing with, but how many more times do we have to see this dynamic play out? I'm so tired of this trope, I want to squash it like a Goomba.
Again, this is not a gender trope. There are many male characters who are also hyper capable or usually wind up in a supplementary mentor role who would probably be more interesting to follow, but the audience POV character takes precedence. If for no other reason, then usually it's the audience's first exposure to the world. So you want someone who's not informed on it, so we have a reason to explain shit. Moving on.
That was the end of the article.
Mm-hmm. At least it was short.
Okay. Comments. The idiot main character and the hero shooting fish out of water in the fantastical world is there for the same reason the POV is usually the main character audience immersion via making the POV something familiar and generic enough for people to project themselves off it.
Yeah, as I just went into, the reason why the uninformed character is usually the POV characters because if it's a new and distinct world, we as the audience want to know what the fuck is going on, and allowing and having the main character not know what's going on gives a good excuse for here, let me give you the exposition of how this world works. That being said, I would still much rather watch in a sequel or some other sort of thing. I would much rather watch a character who knows what the fuck is going on, simply because usually the, wizard slash mentor character is more interesting to me. For obvious fucking reasons, probably, but whatever.
Nuna?
hmm
Yes. Well, it's originally from Fox.com. Here's the archive version, just because I couldn't really get to the site itself.
hmm Brainstormer's computer is being a potato again.
So this was published April 9th, 2023. FBI documents associates internet slang like base and red pill with extremism. It's written by Alexander Hall.
hmm
The doc listed key terms associated with involuntary celibate and racially or ethically motivated violence and extremism.
Brainstormer, you're coming through rather quiet and muffled to me. I don't know if it's the connection or if it's something else.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, that's better.
I think I think I was just too far away from my mic. My bad.
Okay, no problem. But read that again because I didn't catch most of that.
Right, yeah. All right, one second. Let me go back up. All right. FDA documents associate internet slang like base and red pill with extremism. The doc with key terms associated with involuntary celibate and racially or ethically motivated violent extremism.
This is yet another case of the younger generations develop their own lingo and we don't get it. So it must be immoral. It must be morally charged, and not only morally charged, but immoral somehow. Because I don't know, after the age of 50 or so, people just forget how irreverence works, I guess. Or at the very least, that's what we're supposed to believe. I've known plenty of old people who have maintained a decent sense of humor and a decent sense of irreverence well into their older ages. But the establishment doesn't get the opposite of the establishment, I guess, is the long and short of it. Moving on.
Mm. New documents released Monday warned that common internet lingo is being associated with violent extremism by the FBI.
Note that association is not true and doesn't have to be true for people in authority to think it's true. Because just because you in your ivory tower associate based and red pilled with extremism FBI does not mean that association is based on anything rational. In fact, it is categorically erroneous. But never mind. Moving on.
Okay. Heritage Foundation's oversight project said it used a Freedom of Information Act request to expose FBI documents that include glossaries showing that common internet slang has been flagged as an indication of involuntary, celibate, violent extremism or racially or ethically motivated violent extremism. Part of the document refers specifically to incels or those involuntary celibate, whom the threat overview described as possibly seeking to commit violence in support of their beliefs. Society unjustly denies them sexual or romantic attention to which they believe they are entitled. The assessment notes while most incels do not engage in violence, some have been involved in at least 5 lethal attacks in the United States and Canada.
Okay, that's not how incels work. They are basically a glorified support group for people who want to get laid and as yet have been unable to. There's no I don't well actually no, I do know where the assumption that incels are entitled comes from. It's the idea that everything must have a moral component. It can't ever just be a thing in itself. And therefore, if men are complaining about not getting laid, they must blame other people for that, and therefore must be entitled. But that's simply not the case. Basically, incels are just people who want to get laid, can't get laid, and eventually become increasingly depressed because they can't get laid. Because, surprise fucking surprise, when you deny someone human connection, it tends to drive them a little nuts because, humans are a social species and all. But we can't ever frame incels as virtuous or victimized because if men aren't wanted by women, it must be the men's own fault. It couldn't ever be that women are just stuck up bitches, or that society at large might be a bunch of stuck up bitches, regardless of whether they're men or women. Because there are plenty of men who will throw other men under the bus just to be seen as one of the good ones, quote unquote. Anyway, moving on.
Right, okay. Many of the terms in the FBI's list of incel terminology are either widely used across the internet or in innocuous in nature.
Yeah, fair enough. Good for you, Fox News. Um, the terms like based and red pilled are terms that are pretty universally used among anyone who's engaged in like modern youth culture or anything resembling irreverence. Like no one community has a monopoly on internet lingo. Just like nobody in the 80s or 90s had a monopoly on tubular or radical or any of the other, stuff that was probably ostensibly rooted in the punk movement or in slacker culture, but became iconic to an entire generation. But as usual, the powers that be look at what the youth are doing and go, I don't understand this. It must be immoral. Rinse and repeat forever. Moving on.
Sorry, I was reading something.
Hmm.
The one term in the glossary is red pill, which comes from the 1999 film The Matrix and has been used as a metaphor for seeing hidden or politically incorrect truths about the modern world, particularly when it comes to politics or dating. The FBI lists of key terms define it as a belief shared by many online communities that society is corrupt, and that the believer is a victim of this corruption.
What?
Was I not coming through, or
You got muffled again a little bit.
damn it? Okay. One term in the glossary is red pill, which comes from the 1999 film The Matrix and has been used a metaphor for seeing hidden or politically incorrect truths about the modern world, particularly when it comes to politics or dating. The FBI list of key terms defines it as a belief shared by many online communities that society is corrupt and that the believer is a victim of this corruption.
No, if anything, red pilled is a is a meme among people on the internet to show that they are the only people not victims of the corruption of society, i.e., red pilled basically just means seeing through the world's bullshit, seeing through the unnecessary norms and authority of the world. Like that's what the red pill has always represented, at least in common parlance, with regards to the Matrix. It means seeing through the bullshit that society or the world or whatever wants to impinge upon you. Moving on. And I'm assuming he's eating again, so Talking just to fill the dead air.
Sorry, some reason I muted myself while I was eating.
Well, that's fair enough. I just wasn't paying close enough attention, I guess. I was looking at the chat.
All right. The items listed are focused on self-improvement or the struggle to reckon with the marketplace of modern dating.
I I think that's a little bit coldly phrased, but yeah, sure. In broad terms, that's kind of what it means.
You know?
Moving on.
The glossary defines the term Chad as race-specific term used to describe the idealized version of a male who is very successful at getting sexual and romantic attention from women. Later known incels unsuccessfully compete against Chads for attention.
Wait, did they just call it a race-specific term?
Yes.
Okay, I can sort of see where the breakdown in reasoning is occurring because there is the corresponding term Tyrone specifically for a black Chad, basically. But in most internet parlance, a Chad isn't a race specific term. It basically means a alpha or a dude bro or basically what basically what the 80s would have referred to as a jock. Like that's most of what Chad means. A Chad is the arrogant prick, type A jock who everyone resents because they get everything handed to them in life. Or a Chad could mean someone who has um that kind of alpha energy, which is why when someone has a really good take, sometimes you'll see it called a Chad take, or see someone referred to as a Chad outside of that context because they said something blunt or like straight shooty enough that they kind of had a domineering energy about them. Anyway, moving on.
Mm-hmm. Although I did want to address what Grand Troll wrote. I'm not sure the only ones not the victims is the right way to phrase it. Assuming victims of lies, illusions, false assumptions, etc. It's more the matrix metaphor it comes from, the uncomfortable reality versus the comfortable falsehood.
I mean, sure, but I was mostly responding to the idea that red pill had something to do with victimhood, which that's why I phrased it that way. If you're gonna frame red pill in terms of victimhood, the only sensible way to frame it would be those who've taken the red pill are the only ones who aren't the victim of the system or the matrix or what have you. That's why in the movie, um, Morpheus and Neo, there's a scene of them after Neo takes the red pill. There's a scene of them walking um, through a crowd, which is generated by the training program for reasons, but nevertheless, there's a scene of them walking through the crowd, and and Morpheus is basically telling Neo to have pity for the people who are still plugged in, and that their purpose, his and the other people who have been red pilled, are to wake people up so that they can be free. Anyway, moving on.
Right, sorry, I picked the worst time, so I take a bite or something.
Mhm.
The list also includes the term looks maxing, which is defined in the document as the process of self-improvement with the intent to become more attractive. I've never heard of that term.
I have, but it's fairly rare even on internet circles. Like that's something that's something that's not even that common among like incel forums. The idea of look maxing I think comes mostly from the pickup artist circle of um like your Bruce V's and Andrew Tate's and so forth. Yeah, Dragon Turtle, there is a negative connotation, or there was originally a negative connotation of the there was originally a negative connotation of Chad. It's just that when the term Chad made the transition um from uh incel lingo specifically to broader internet lingo, a lot of people started embracing Chad as something they actually desired to be, rather than something that the internet that the incels basically the incel equivalent of like uh high achieving preppy douchebag, because the original context of Chad and Stacy within the incel thing was Chad was basically a shorthand for all the like alpha male dicks who get laid in spite of all the incels, and Stacy's are basically the basically it's a shorthand for the jock and cheerleader stereotype that we all remember from high school, or at least I do, because I actually grew up in a high school where that shit actually still meant something, unlike Brainstorm apparently. Anyway, moving forward.
Right, okay. There are many terms associated with self-pity rather than violence, such as saying it's over to convey the hopelessness of being an incel, referring to a height cell, a bald cell, to define people with short stature or baldness, respectively.
Hmm.
I don't have anything to say though.
Yeah, it's just a subcategory of people. It is basically a way of labeling why a given incel can't get laid, whether it's the height factor or whether they're bald or whatever.
Moving on, or
Yeah, moving forward.
okay. Uh, the FBI list for terms associated with racially inclined or ethnically motivated violent extremism has a mix of extreme terms and innocuous ones. Red pill also appears. Wait, what? Never mind, never mind.
Hmm.
Red pill also appears in this list, but with a different description. In the context of RMDE ideology, taking the red pill or becoming red pilled indicates the adoption of racist, anti-Semitic, or fascist beliefs.
No, the the closest thing to a fascist that the internet has generated by its on its own was Richard Spencer and the actual you know called themselves the alt right, such as John Francois, Gary P. I think Baked Alaska, um, and some other people. And the one thing that the original alt right have in common is they're all seen as a bunch of childish, dick-headed posers to be mocked mercilessly. I remember 2017. I was there I remember the emergence of the original alt-right, and they were all bitch slapped to hell and back by what was then referred to as the skeptic community. Um, as well they deserve to be, because Richard Spencer is a cartoon supervillain so incompetently hilarious that Dr. Doofenshmirtz, Dr. Draken, and Dr. Evil would all gang up on them to take their lunch money. Yeah, moving on.
Based is defined by the FBI as a word used to refer to someone who has been converted to racist ideology or as a way of indicating ideological agreement. In regular par- parlance, based is a context-specific word coined by rapper Little B that can mean, as Know Your Meaning describes, anything ranging from something that is agreeable and cool to something considered anti-woke.
Based basically just means the same as the phrase mic drop used to mean. It's a blunt, direct, um, appropriately simplified or harsh truth that somebody dropped. Or it could be used somewhat ironically to basically imply that a exaggerated joke position or straw man of somebody might be based. That's based basically just means a straight shooter, or in a similar context the term mic drop in like Gen X slang. Anyway, moving on. The only people who would use or actually before we move on, the only people who you would use based in a racial context are either the SJWs themselves or the aforementioned tiny collapsed joke movement that was the actual alt-right back in the day. Most people don't see race as a most people don't see race or like fascism to be a topic of conversation, let alone a organically arising topic of conversation. The only time those things get brought up is usually to mock the shit out of them. As well it should be, because race is stupid and fascism and communism are both horrifyingly dickheaded stupidity.
Mhm. Um, uh,
Mm-hmm.
The list also includes the term LARPing, which was originally used to describe people engaged in live-action roleplay, often as characters in high fantasy settings. In a political context, the term can be used for people with an impractical or improbable political vision, such as imagining a monarchistic future for the United States. What the
No, LARPing just, LARPing as it always has meant is basically in like an informal internet lingo context, basically just means someone who either has delusions of grandeur and are attempting to do something that it's implausible for them to do, or someone who's faking shit. It basically means exactly the same thing as LARPing had always meant. It just usually when you accuse someone of LARPing, it's more about um someone having no self-awareness, or someone having pretensions of a position that they don't or couldn't hold. Like I've used this in the context of referring to Antifa as a bunch of middle class bastards LARPing as revolutionaries, because they are basically it. It's the idea of adopting a role in a surface level or pretentious context with minimal amounts of self awareness. That's basic in like a political or socio political context. That's what LARPing means. It's a way of saying you are unself-aware, disingenuous, and you're essentially way too far up your own ass. Or you're being childish and stupid. Some combination of all of the above. Mhm.
Right, I'm back. Oh, okay. Sorry, I had to leave. I had to take it. I had to be away for a second. So,
Mhm.
the FBI glossary says the term is used to deride individuals accused of not being as extreme or in possession of skills or other valued characteristics they claim to have.
Brainstormer, get closer to your mic and try that again. You garbled again.
God damn it. Okay, am I coming through now?
Yes. Now you're fine.
Okay. The FBI glossary says the term is used to deride individuals accused of not being as extreme or in possession of skills or other valued characteristics they claim to have.
And that's their definition of LARPing?
Yes.
Okay, that one's not bad. That one I will give you. That it it's still weighed down with far too much moral fervor and trying to frame literal people who are disingenuous, pretentious pricks as the heroes, but as a definition of LARPing goes, it's not terrible.
Oh, sorry. The FBI declined a comment when reached out by Fox News Digital.
Yeah. And just for the record, I don't particularly like Fox News either. But if it's a choice between Fox News and the FBI, I guess I will side with Fox News. I certainly like Fox News much less now that they've gotten rid of the one even semi-sane voice on their network, i.e. Tucker. And I specify the word semi-sane because I don't particularly like or agree with Tucker on much either, but as far as right-wing voices go, he's at least a full, like, order of magnitude more sane than anyone else on Fox News.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Dragon Turtle, at the end of this, can we get a tally of how many each of internet slang words they associate with right-wing extremism and or instaphobes or phobes? Instaphobes? It's instaphobes.
Istophobes, basically.
Oh,
It's basically a shorthand for all the various, words ending in ist or phobia they associate with things. And so far they've defined, I think, 3 words, Dragon Turtle, and they're 0 for 3. They 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 have they have erroneously associated all three, or they've associated all of the words that they've tried to define with with extremism or some kind of subhuman hatred. So, yeah, count how many they've defined so far, and that is the number of tallies in that camp.
I'd just go with the built-in definition LARP, live action roleplay. Live action being physical, acting it out as much as you can, safely and physically capable of.
See that there's a funny thing where, like, when I use it in a genuine in a like general context, I associate it with like disingenuousness or having ideas or aspirations above your station. But the funny thing is, it gets to the point where I don't use the word LARP to describe LARPers much anymore because most LARPers that I've seen um, put a lot of work into their LARPing, whereas most people you would apply LARP to in an informal context are delusional cunts. Then again, most of my experience with IRL LARPers comes from people who belong to um, the Society for Creative Anachronism, which is basically the highest tier of quasi medieval LARPing.
Anyway, we're gonna move on.
Mm-hmm.
I took them through okay, or
Yeah, you're fine now.
okay?
Oh wait, was that the end of the article?
Yeah.
Okay, so however many terms they tried to define Dragon Turtle for your tally is the number of terms they erroneously associated with basically subhuman immoral bastards of any description. It's a fun world where every single human in a given world dehumanizes every other human on said given world. But you know, I beat the really shouldn't dehumanize anyone drum enough times that I think everyone knows my feelings on that. If you are dealing with humans, you probably shouldn't dehumanize because it's counterfactual, if nothing else.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, moving on. We're making pretty good time tonight, weirdly.
So the Flash trailer. This trailer 2.
Mm-hmm. Though honestly, if it were labeled correctly, it would be called Batman No Way Home because they're trying to minimize the Flash's involvement as much as possible.
I have things to say as we go on. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, the last comments are in trouble before we start. So the people actually thinking they are overthrowing the government put less effort into it than the people literally doing it as a fan. Lol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, my favorite context to use the word LARPing outside of referring to actual LARPers is when I refer to trust fund kids LARPing as revolutionaries because everyone basically gets what I mean when I say that. But again, we need to come up with a different word because I don't want to associate that kind of low tier role playing with actual LARPers because actual LARPers put effort in usually.
Alright. Anyway, moving on from that. Yeah, Flash trailer. I have things to say, and I'm sure you do too, Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
So, shall we banana?
We shall bat Nana.
I'm giving you the look.
I know,
I
but
just don't.
you
Look,
know as well as I do the main selling point of this movie is Michael Keaton. So
I know.
it's
It's like I don't think it, even with that, I don't think it's warranted.
fair, but
I'll get into my feelings about that like as we go on. So, or
yeah, there like you say, there's a lot of things we could say about this. Anyway, let's bet Nana.
banana.
I lost my parents. That pain made me who I am.
I spent a lifetime trying to right the wrongs of the past.
Yeah.
Please note the first line in the trailer and the first 20 seconds of it were entirely occupied by Batman talking.
Yeah. It sucks for the character of the Flash, just given all the stupidity and shit that's going on.
Well, it sucks for all of DC basically because in a sane world, this movie either would have been unnecessary to begin with because they've always been using Flashpoint as the magic in-universe explanation for why we can reboot the universe and therefore get a mulligan on all of our mistakes button. But also, if they did a Flashpoint for other reasons than that, for other reasons than the we get a mulligan button, it would actually be focused on the Flash in an ideal world. But is it possible to call an entire ad campaign disingenuous? Because I feel like if that could be said about anything, it would be said about this, because they are literally selling a universe reboot movie and a Flash movie on nothing but the good feelings people have towards Batman, and
Yeah,
and specifically Michael Keaton's Batman.
yeah, it just. I mean, we're not there yet. I'll talk more, but I still got some things to mention. So, well,
Mhm.
but let's continue, and I'll say when it feels appropriate to mention it.
Yeah. Batnana.
But
As if fighting crime would bring my parents back. You actually did it.
I can't imagine what you've been through.
I love you, Mikey.
You lost both parents in one day.
okay,
Bruce, don't encourage him. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's I wanted to save until like we started getting to see more like the action stuff, but
Hmm.
I don't care about any of this.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
And
here's so I'm sorry. Like
go ahead. You go first, and then I'll go.
the thing about this, like all of this, is it's so empty.
Half-assed.
There, I want to care because I've read this character. I've like Barry Allen, the character, and I've looked into his stuff about him. He's a really cool fucking character, but given like it's not even just the behind the scenes stuff that's affecting me. Like not even just that. It's just like this character, the Barry Allen we've seen.
The Ezra Miller Flash is not a good version of the Flash, irrespective of all the amoral chicanery he's gotten up to.
Yeah. But it's just like we also have not seen enough of this like this version of Barry Allen, who is written to be more so like Wally West.
Than Barry for some reason.
Yeah.
Because the writers just confused him, I suppose. But getting back to my is it possible to label?
Sorry, I just got like one more thing to like.
Go ahead.
But
You're fine.
again, the emptiness of like this doesn't feel like it's any of this is earned. You know, like it doesn't. Like it's such a shaky foundation that this movie is being put on that I don't think it works at all.
Yeah. And I guess that's actually a pretty good segue back to my is it possible to label an entire ad campaign as disingenuous point? Because here's the thing. This movie is selling itself entirely on Batman, to the point that it could literally just be called Batman No Way Home, as I've joked many times. But also, here's the other interesting thing. Irrespective of all the stuff the actors have gotten up to, just looking at this as DC's basically, we get a mulligan button / please forgive us for all the bullshit we've done thing. Even in that context, replacing Clark with Kara so that we don't have to deal with Henry Cavill. Having Michael Keaton here to basically act as a bunch of jangling keys. Because that's the thing that pisses me off more than anything. Is not only are you selling a Flash movie on Batman, which is already kind of annoying, you're trying to sell us on Michael Keaton's incarnation of Batman specifically. But here's how I know they didn't think their way through this. Because most of the shots of Batman in this movie do not bear any resemblance whatsoever to the Tim Burton incarnation, which is the Michael Keaton Batman. See, because that's the thing. The incarnation that people are nostalgic for isn't just the actor. It was a combination of the actor's input, which was worthwhile, and that's great and everything. But it was also Tim Burton's aesthetics. If this is supposed to be the Tim Burton universe, why doesn't it look like any Tim Burton? Why aren't there any Burton-esque aspects of Gotham, or at the very least, nods to the animated series? And most importantly of all, and this is crucial to a version of Batman, Batman is fundamentally, especially the Burton incarnation, which would then lead into the, Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, Kevin Conroy version, a creature of the night. And yet most of his action scenes, for inexplicable reasons, take place in daylight. That's how I know this is nothing but, we're going to jangle the keys of Michael Keaton's Batman in front of you. Never mind that it's not actually the version you care about. Because if they actually wanted to give actual decent fan service, not only would they replicate Michael Keaton as Batman, which is half of the story, but they would also make it so that his portion of the Flash movie was set in the Burton timeline, or at the very least a mixture of the Burton and animated series timeline. But they didn't bother. They think that just having the actor there is enough to jangle the keys in front of our eyes. Yeah, no thanks.
Anyway, I think a part of me is worried that we might have blown our load too soon, but
yeah, fair enough. But anyway, let's bet Nana.
I don't know.
Hey.
I went back in time to save my parents. But instead, I completely broke the universe.
If you went back and changed the past, this world must die.
So,
And
sorry.
go ahead.
Well, okay. So I guess I do want to talk technical stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's me and I'm going to talk about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate how unfinished a lot of the CGI looks.
And it's not like they can still. I guess they could still work on it until literally the day it comes out in June, but that's still massively unprofessional.
I know. It's just it's weird how, and again, empty. I want to say this, from the writing, from how the world seems to be filled and stuff. We've talked ad nauseum how flawed Snyder's films were, but they at least had some kind of tangibility to them, and
they had weight behind them because he's good at giving things weight. That's one virtue I will give to Zack Snyder. He's good at making these godlike beings, which is how he normally framed them, feel like they could exist and feel like they have weight.
Yeah, bit pretentious. I will not
Yeah, he's stuck in the 80s let's deconstruct everything version of the DC universe because that's all he understands. But at least it's not the perspective that anyone wanted or that anyone could really use right now, but it's at least a fan perspective.
Right. But this again, it just all feels like they're not there, there's nothing, they're not even wearing anything. I think they actually used real costumes for the for Kryptonians in Man of Steel most of the time.
They did. There are behind the scenes photos. We've seen what the costumes look like without the filters and stuff, and they pretty much look the same.
Well, let's Superman suit is a little desaturated, but that's a given.
But that's which in and of itself was stupid. But we're not dumping on Snyder's stupidity right now. We're dumping on this new fresh version of stupidity.
I think you can clearly tell that all of this is CGI.
Yeah. And here's the other half of it, which is, if you were smart, DC, you would have just left out the Kryptonian stuff entirely, frankly. Because if you're not going to apologize for how you treated Henry and how you treated basically the entire attempt for him to play an actual Superman, it was probably better off that you just not reference Krypton for this entire movie and then we could have gotten a new version come 2025 with Superman Legacy. That would have at least given people long enough to cool off a bit. It would have at least made the fan rage abate some. But instead of that, instead of leaving well enough alone and kind of going whistle whistle, nothing to see here, you'll see Kryptonians again in 2025, you had to rub salt on the wound by not only having a version of Krypton here, but specifically Michael Shannon's Zod. And instead of having Henry, because if you're gonna have Zod, this version of Zod, you should have Henry as Superman. Instead of that, you swapped in Supergirl, which Supergirl is fine and she can be a good character in her own right and whatever. But when the fan base is mad at you for upstaging and belittling Superman, probably not the best time to try and sell them on the and this is probably what it's going to be because modern day Hollywood, probably not the best time to try and force the feminist version into the spotlight. Either you should have recast Zod with whoever you're going to cast Zod as in the new version, or left out Krypton entirely. And frankly, here's the other thing that is a sloppy, in-universe world-building thing. Normally, with these kind of Erect the Multiverse reboot type stories, the version of the characters you meet in the alternate universe later on become the mainstream versions. Like in a more competently done version of this, the version of Batman you would meet in the alternate universe would be the James Gunn incarnation. Same thing with the version of Zod or the version of Superman or whatever. But instead of using this movie for what it's actually supposed to be for, which is, make the transition between the Snyderverse or the softcore Snyderverse and the Gunverse, you're going to have people get attached to a whole nother version of Zod and the Kryptonian mythos and a whole nother version of Batman that we're not going to see again. So rather than even use this movie as the transitionary movie that it is, it's still stuck halfway between the Gunverse and the Snyderverse. And it's not going to become relevant. None of this is going to be relevant come the James Gunn universe. Which is stupid. Moving on.
Right, give me 1 second.
Batnana.
1 sec.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just want to mention, it doesn't feel epic either. Like, the whole Thorn trailer, it doesn't feel epic, which, honestly, it should be, right?
Again, since this is basically almost a 1-to-1 ripoff of No Way Home, let's be real about it. It's No Way Home, but starring Batman instead of Spider-Man for some reason. You would think they would be able to replicate what the scale of No Way Home felt like, because it did. For all of its writing issues, that movie did at least feel epic and did feel like a multiversal story. This movie just kind of exists. It doesn't effectively serve any of the purposes that it's supposed to. It just is we're releasing this because it's on the schedule. It's kind of like how the Marvels felt yesterday of there's no purpose behind us making this movie. We don't expect you to actually care about it, but we're releasing it because it was on the schedule.
Shall we?
Yep. Banana.
Banana.
You changed the future.
Do you know what the symbol stands for?
It means hope, right?
I know hope is like Zod.
Okay, that's not gonna totally piss off the Henry Cavill fans or anything. The reference to the symbol of hope thing. And yeah, I know that's from the comics too, but it was first referenced in the movies in Man of Steel.
Again, everything is just so off about this movie. How everything looks how everything.
It's unself-aware incompetence, just like the James Gunn announcement was. And I don't under.
I wouldn't even. I'm sorry. Like I wouldn't even say that. I would say it's just. I would almost say. I want to say tonally inconsistent, but I'm not sure if that's right.
Well, for it to be tonally inconsistent, it would have to have a tone, and I haven't seen one yet. Like,
Right. Okay.
it's just the characters kind of going through the motions and hoping that we'll care.
Yeah. And you know what worst part about this is? I feel bad for the actress playing Supergirl because honestly, she seems like she's doing pretty well.
Yeah, but there's no way people are gonna take to her because, one, you're replacing Henry Cavill. Two, you're doing it with Supergirl rather than another version of Superman. So that's gonna piss off some people. And again, I know Supergirl is her own character, but when everyone is mad at you for how you mistreated and misused Superman, is not the time to make an issue of Supergirl. Unless you have zero self-awareness and don't know how your fan base works, which I think is 90% of the problem. As usual, the main issue with DC post Snyder is, will you guys learn to read the fucking room, please?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like even the moments we're seeing here, which are supposed to be references to things, I'm not like they're just not hitting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole "let's get nuts" thing, but and
yeah, and of all the Michael Keaton Batman lines you could have gone with that would have evoked the badassery that was Michael Keaton's Batman, like I want you to tell your friends about me, or hell, the classic "I'm Batman" or something. The line you pull out of the ether was the line that was deliberately supposed to be Bruce Wayne basically kind of laughing at himself and making a joke of himself so as to prevent people from making the connection between him and Batman. Like the joke line from, I can't remember if it was 89 or if it was Batman Returns, but the
89.
joke line is the one they bring back rather than any of the like badass serious lines.
It's from '89, where he's threatening.
Okay, yeah, it's in the same scene as Dance with the Devil in the Pale Moonlight, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, of all the lines of Michael Keaton's Batman you could have used, one, this isn't even a Batman line; it's a Bruce Wayne line specifically, and two, it was deliberately meant to be out of character and a joke, so that Bruce could bluff the Joker, so that he didn't make the connection between Batman and Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something Bruce would do, and good for Tim Burton for picking up on that. But again, of all the badass lines you could have gone with, or hell, you could have even referenced stuff from the animated series. You could have done the "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman" thing. But instead, no, you go with "let's get nuts," the most out of character Batman line ever.
Mm.
Deliberately so.
Although to me, the Batman costume looked kind of weird.
It does because it doesn't fit him anymore. He honestly should have played Thomas Wayne if this is supposed to be an adaptation of Flashpoint, and B, if not that, played a version of old Bruce in a Batman Beyond type setting.
Honestly, I think that is a missed opportunity to have him like with BVS. Like he could have played Thomas Wayne there.
He could have, and it would have made perfect sense. But because he's gotten old, and therefore doesn't really work as Batman anymore, and also because the lighting and the world around him doesn't even try to evoke the Burton movies that this is supposed to be the version of from. It just looks like a cheap Batman cosplayer. It literally reminds me a little bit of the scene at the beginning of The Dark Knight when the kid in hockey pants tries to LARP as Batman, and Batman shows up and basically shows him what it really means to be a Batman. It reminds me of that, except this time it's an old man trying to LARP as Batman, which could work if we were doing old Bruce or if we were doing Thomas Wayne. But this is supposed to be the Burtonverse version, or at least some version that's related to either the Burton movies or the animated series.
Anyway.
Mhm.
Also, it's just like the symbol seems kind of smaller. Is that just me?
Yeah. And it looks dingier and older and kind of crappier. Almost like the lighting and aesthetics of the Tim Burton movies were important to the atmosphere of the character or something.
Anyway. Banana?
Banana.
I have to undo what I did.
Really smart, man. Make us who we are.
Again, I feel sorry for like a lot of these actors just because like Ben Affleck never got a chance to like a fair shake to do that.
No, it's the same with Henry Cavill. He never actually got to really play the character.
Right, and it sucks that Ben, like his final appearance as Batman, is going to be in this movie.
Yep. It's also sad that Michael Keaton's probable last appearance as Batman is going to be in this movie as well. As if Joel Schumacher didn't do enough to tarnish my memories of that franchise.
Yeah, and again, I'm just not getting any sense of anything, like, at all.
No, it's literally like this entire movie is just going through the motions. Because we have to have an in-universe explanation as to why the universe is different now. So we're adapting the universe rebooting storyline that is Flashpoint, and then again, not even doing that right.
Yeah, again, I'm tired. Alright, moving on, or anything else?
No, Batman.
I don't know.
I meant to go back and fix them. I'll let your tragedy define you.
I feel nothing with this at all.
And again, I know I brought this point up earlier, but you see how awful Batman looks in the daylight?
I think the issue is one, the color grading. Like I know that's a broken record at this point, but and the lighting. The weird thing is I don't like okay, the Batman. You had scenes of him in the daylight and he looked fucking good.
It doesn't have to look terrible, but
I think
in particular
sorry, just to get technical here. The issue is it's completely flat lighting. Like there's no there's no shadows, there's no there's no contrast, there's nothing there to give you like a depth or volume of how this looks.
And then you have Batman stuck in the center of it, which is a very overdramatic operatic character in an otherwise normal looking city. There's a reason why Batman movies work best when they're stylized, guys. Also, if you're going to have Batman in a movie, he probably should be a creature of the night. Hence, don't make him go out during the middle of the day unless you do the appropriate stylization to make daylight not terrible.
Yeah, it's super. Yeah, like again, I wanted to bring up the color grading of like how like flat everything is. Like it doesn't feel like there's any depth or color or it's all very muted, right? Like, is it just me or?
No, it's not just you. It is very flat. And Dragon Turtle, I believe this is supposed to be the version of Supergirl that is Clark's daughter.
No,
But don't
it
quote
is,
me.
it is Kara Zor-El, Clark's cousin, but they stylized her after Laura, Laura, who is a daughter of Wonder Woman, like an Elseworlds daughter of Superman and Wonder Woman, which is a weird choice to me. But they stylized like the character, like the look and the costume after her.
Yeah, pick a lane. If she's supposed to be Kara, then she should be blonde. If she's supposed to be Laura, then she should be called Laura.
Again, I just weird. They make so many weird decisions.
Like, again, the half-assed attempt at fan service that's only going to end up pissing people off. Again, DC, if you're going to play in the superhero and geekdom more generally space, you probably should make some effort to at least attempt to figure out what your fan base actually wants and give it to them.
Anyway.
Yeah. Batnana.
No matter what we do, we're not going to be able to fix this. No! Nobody dies!
Batman continues to look terrible in the daylight, and we're moving on.
Again, I will attest to the fact that it's not stylized.
Yeah, if it were stylized, this wouldn't be a problem, because there are ways you can stylize daylight, like they kind of did in the Batman, where Batman in the daylight wouldn't be completely out of left field.
Hell,
But
even
here,
Justice League movies where they gave it kind of a gold, like a rising, like sunset or sunrise, I think is like the best time to show Batman in the daylight.
yeah, like, but point being, because Batman's entire aesthetic is overblown operatic darkness, having him be in the brightest, most clear light of day doesn't work. Hell, you could even do, and I can't believe I'm gonna use this movie as a positive example, but you know how in the Twilight movies Forbes was always clouded over so they could use like a blue tinge, and therefore it made things seem dark and dramatic even during daylight?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I can't believe it's come to the point where I'm using Twilight as a positive example of how to do something, but if you needed Batman to exist in a daylight setting, have it be overcast or have the light be filtered in such a way that it still seems dark and dingy so that Batman isn't out of place.
Mm-hmm.
I think even the Burton films did this at some point, because wasn't there a scene where Joker attacked somebody in the daylight and Batman showed up to stop them and it didn't look terrible?
No, it was Bruce Wayne that saw him, but I don't know. I don't know if Batman was ever in the daylight during in the Tim Burton movie.
I think if it happened, it only happened once, and I don't remember. But in any case, like, there are ways to stylize daylight in such a way that it's not terrible for a character like Batman, whose overblown dark and operaticness, kind of clashes with the brightest, clearest possible daylight ever.
Like, honestly,
that's the thing. It's not even freaking cloudy, and that bothers me too. Like, could you not at least give him some cloud cover?
Just in a daylight setting, I know what you mean, but the way you phrase it sounds like you mean it as opposed to a world of eternal night. Lol.
you understood what I meant, Dragon Turtle, but I get that the phrasing wasn't ideal, but I'm trying to convey this in a language that someone from Hollywood who watches this would actually understand. So of course it's gonna end up sounding fucking pretentious.
Anyway. Banana?
Mm-hmm. Banana.
You're strapped to your parachutes. And where's yours?
Even the night shot was too bright. If you're gonna use Batman to be the one thing in this Flash movie that's worth watching, you might want to make sure you actually serve the character properly, instead of making him look silly. Yeah, but I'm not going to be surprised when the Flash manages to just barely match the first Ant-Man in terms of box office. Because I don't think even Michael Keaton can save that movie. And the only reason it is probably going to make more than Ant-Man Quantumania or Shazam 2 is because of Michael Keaton. That might just barely make it into the like $500 to $600 million range. But if it hits 700, I'll eat my fucking hat. Because there's no way in hell. If it hits 700 million, I will literally eat my hat. But I don't think I'm in any danger of eating my hat anytime soon.
So I setting up the next thing, and I was also looking at because there are like a couple more things I want to talk about regarding the Flash. I'm just getting like some things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just getting like two images up and running.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to talk about the Flash suit for the movie because some issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get an image up here real quick. There we go. That's supposed to be an alternate version of Barry. Giant Turtle, just to answer your question.
Yeah, Ezra Miller is actually playing two characters in this movie, as if the movie wasn't handicapped enough.
Right. So here's it's supposed to be the actual suit for the movie. And this was actually brought to my attention when I was scrolling Twitter earlier today, and I saw someone thread about how this is a bad suit for the Flash.
Uh-huh.
I do have to agree. Like looking at it, like it's for one thing, I don't think it works for Ezra Miller's body type.
No, it doesn't. Also, the like armored Flash look has never really looked good because Flash's whole shtick is being, a runner. So
you and I have a brief conversation about that, and I'll bring that up later. But the main issue I have with it is
it's not sleek, and Flash's whole thing should being sleek and aerodynamic is supposed to be the Flash's whole shtick.
Like the weird thing is, I get what they were trying to go for, making it look kind of
they wanted to make it look more tactical, like it was an actual tactical suit, and there was a reason for him to wear it.
Right. But it just feels kind of, I want to say rubbery,
Mm-hmm.
and just a lot of weird decisions, like too much red, which I realize is weird, but like the gold isn't really accenting much.
Yeah.
Like
Sorry, I saw Dragon Turtle's comment and it made me laugh.
I also spelled Carrie wrong, Dragon Turtle.
Yeah, it's Carrie with a C.
C-A, there's an E in there, I know that. But yeah, it looks so weird to me. Like I can't really define it but a lot of weird design decisions were made for this costume, and none of it works well.
No. Again, I think it's because partially to make it look more realistic and tactical, and partially because Zack Snyder likes photographing the male form as though it's bulky. And unfortunately, there is nothing under the sun bulky about Ezra Miller, except for maybe his ego.
I don't see it as tactical, mind you. I just think it's too. It's just too big. And looking at Ezra Miller, who is not a big person, it doesn't fit. And also the problem is, every time we've seen it on the camera of the trailers and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
they just painted over it like they've done with the spider suit in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like just make a fully CGI costume,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't help.
Yeah. Also, you would think casting a runner character with a skinny actor like Ezra Miller would actually work in their favor, because then they could make him very, very agile and spry and shit. But that's another thing. With all the extra padding and armor plating and stuff, there's no way a speedster could move in that. It would, like, the armor would literally flake off at the speeds the Flash has to move.
Well,
like the heat plating at the on the outside of a space shuttle capsule.
So I'm of two minds on this. I don't think it should be like fully armored, but I can understand like putting pieces of armor like on the shins, the knees, the elbows. That I can understand. And like I'm not talking like bulky pieces of armor, right?
What basically you could have done, and it would have actually made it make sense, and would have also probably worked better for Ezra Miller's body type, is you have it be armor, but you have the armor be skin tight.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That was what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a piece of concept art apparently for an early Flash costume that I think could have worked, and I found it.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Is it coming out? Is it coming through, or?
Yeah, it's coming through fine.
Okay. It's one of the better versions I could find of a Flash suit concept for Zack Snyder style.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of one I'm using for the rewrite version I'm doing of the Flash movie. And this is where I want to get with, like, this is also where I want to kind of segue with, like, the whole multiverse Flash movie thing. You don't need to do Flashpoint, mainly because the story of Flashpoint has too much baggage behind it that you need a lot of build up to it for it to properly work.
They used it because it's a in-universe explanation to reboot the universe. It's essentially an in-universe reboot button.
Yeah, like, it's still stupid to use it so early.
Well, in fairness, they kind of had to, because DC has been failing upwards this entire time, basically.
I know. I'm just saying. Again, my feelings on the matter are still that.
Yeah, like I understand from a business perspective why this movie and why Flashpoint and why, like, I get it. As soon as BVS managed not to make $1 billion, the suits probably freaked the fuck out because a movie where Batman fights Superman that also features Wonder Woman should have easily cleared $1 billion.
Right.
But it didn't, and so DC flipped the fuck out, and so they looked at their slate and were like, okay, put a Flashpoint movie there so that whatever works in our coming movies we can keep while getting rid of all the stuff people don't like. That's why that's there.
But I honestly dig this version kind of more than like even the official Zack Snyder costume, just because it's not super busy, not as busy as like the movie version.
Yeah, the movie version seems to think that busy makes things look realistic, and I know it's somewhat bad form to apply real world physics to superheroes and comic books and stuff, even though there's a really, really, really freaking great book called The Physics of Superheroes that basically justifies most of the weird physics of superhero universes, and it's awesome, but that's neither here nor there. I know it's considered bad form to apply real world physics to superheroes to a large degree, but I can't look at Ezra Miller's Flash suit, the canonical one, the movie one, and not think to myself, the drag on that thing is insane and you couldn't possibly move in it.
Right. So kind of going back, like honestly, and I don't mind the multiverse at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the Flash seems pretty good for doing a multiverse movie. But I myself, and I'm doing this for a rewritten version, is you adapt the Flash of Two Worlds storyline by Gardner Fox. Which I believe did introduce the concept of the multiverse to DC. Don't quote me on that, but.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, Dragon Turtle. That's a point many people have made. If you're gonna keep Flashpoint as a mulligan point, you're gonna have to actually get rid of the things people didn't like while keeping the things people did, and they did the opposite. They got rid of all the things people liked while nuking everything while keeping everything that they hated.
So, like I said, I'm doing a whole revision of the DC movies up to the Flash movie, like from Man of Steel to the Flash. That's about. Hold on, I have a list here. That's 16 movies I have to. Well, no, actually.
I was gonna say some of them you can just leave alone.
Yeah,
because they're not that bad.
I stand corrected. It's 13. 13 out of 16 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because Shazam, well, Aquaman, Shazam, and the Suicide Squad, I don't have to change.
Yeah.
But,
and by that, I assume you mean the second Suicide Squad, which they really should have just called Suicide Squad 2 to cut down on confusion.
Not the Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad is the 2016 one. And, but yeah, like, for the Flash movie, like, how I would have done it, obviously, like, the Flash of Two Worlds. One, because you get to, like, kind of bring in the Golden Age stuff, which a lot of people are super into. Well, okay. Yeah. And Jay Garrick is a really cool character and can help with Barry Allen as the Flash, who actually in his actual comic book origin, like the one from the Silver Age, right? He was inspired by comics of Jay Garrick the Flash.
Yeah.
Which helped him.
Yeah, my only problem is I really despise Earth 2. I prefer it when the Justice Society and the Justice League both exist on the same universe, and the Society eventually passes the torch to the League.
That's fair.
Kind of like what they did with Smallville, but
I understand that. That's fair. like it's a storyline, so I'm just adapting it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It certainly makes more sense to adapt that than to adapt Flashpoint. But I just stating for the record and for posterity, I don't like Earth 2. I want there to be a consistent continuity where everything can exist on one Earth.
To be
Damn
fair,
it.
there is a Justice Society in the DCU as I'm rewriting it. I think if nothing else, in this version of Flash movie that I'm working on, it really is just an alternate version of Jay Garrick, because the Jay Garrick from the DCEU is kind of too old,
Mm-hmm.
or has passed away, because
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So it's less multiple universes and more just an excuse to have both of these characters exist in the same time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's weird how no one really has touched that. Like, it's weird how no one. I wonder if anyone ever brought that up, the storyline, when they were pitching the Flash movie.
Flash of Two Worlds?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think they had an intern figure out a way to use. We need an in-universe excuse to reboot things so that we can fix all of our mistakes. Find a storyline that does that, and the intern came back with Flashpoint. That's what I'm betting happened. He was probably an unpaid intern too.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like I don't mind Flash going in other universes and stuff. Fuck. Isn't there a rule or something that a bad movie won't do much to the bad movie sales unless it's an unknown franchise? And even then, you have things like the reputation of directors, actors, studios, etc. It usually shows up a movie or two later if the ablative armor of fan goodwill doesn't take it, and then take about 3 times as long with good content to recover. Pretty much instant with fan goodwill tainted.
I don't know, Dragon Turtle. I'm having a hard time putting it. I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying. Like I couldn't really hear Brainstormer, so I'm looking at what you said in the chat so that I could try and read it. And
am I coming through now, or what the fuck?
You're fine. You're fine now. Yeah.
What the hell?
There's kind of an echo on your voice that your words sometimes get lost in the reverb. It seems when you get too far away from the mic.
I don't know what to do about that, because I haven't touched anything with my control, with my settings on anything ever.
Anyway, I guess we should move on to the last thing of the night.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a positive one, but it's certainly better than the Flash trailer.
Yeah. Which, how far has the Flash franchise fallen that the Transformers movie is better?
Yeah.
Still think the best Transformers movie so far has been the Bumblebee movie, but that one didn't make money, sadly. So, meh.
Well, yeah, it's Transformers Rise of the Beast, which is trailer. And fun fact, I am doing a rewrite of, well, the sequel trilogy to Transformers, which I guess, okay. TLDR, sort of, if you have a bad movie, people will see it still, will still see that bad movie, but they won't go to the next one, even if it's good, because they remember it was bad last time.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is kind of a thing. Sometimes. I don't know if it's consistent enough to be considered a rule of thumb, especially recently, what with the internet existing. But yeah, I think I get what you're talking about now. Anyway, Bananas in Disguise.
What the fuck?
No.
Yeah, but yeah, bananas. I'll have things to say.
Bananas in Disguise.
For centuries, our kind has stayed hidden on Earth. But darkness has found us again. Pride.
No, I mean, Michael Bay isn't directing this, right?
No.
Doesn't
They
feel-
finally let that franchise end. Hooray. This is another new iteration or another attempt at a new iteration like the movie was.
Hold on. Yeah,
And although I think this version is trying to be more of a soft reboot of the Michael Bay movies rather than an out and out reboot like Bumblebee was. Because the studio saw that Bumblebee didn't do well and they were like, quick, find a way to basically do Michael Bay again, but without the stupidity of Michael Bay. Which isn't a terrible idea, I guess. I just wish Bumblebee had made all the money.
right. This is weird. I don't have anything to say yet, but something about it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Move on.
Bananas in Disguise.
I don't know.
This is about the fate of all living things. Unicron is coming.
Okay, so it's a weird tonal shift there in terms of the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Where it starts off serious and then it's
A lot of trailers do that, to be fair.
I know. I mean, I don't like it either way.
No, it's if there was ever a time when it was useful, that time has long since passed, but it's not entirely out of left field, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Bananas in Disguise.
Well, I was gonna say I dig the Maximals design.
Hmm.
Even though we only see them in the animal forms mostly.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of bizarre that for as much as the Transformers movies focus on cars, they weren't really ever considered car movies. Speaking of things that denote the incompetence of the Transformers franchise and movies so far. How can you make a franchise where your main characters literally are cars and not get the car guys on board with it?
I mean, the thing I have issue with the cars in Transformers is they're too designer. You know, they're too high end.
See, I disagree. I like high-end cars, but sadly enough, they never made the car designs at all. Like, they never focused on them because the robot designs were so over-designed that the car designs got lost in the scuffle.
Now, they're robots in disguise, and it's not really disguising yourself if you're like a super high end car. So that's where my issue kind of comes from.
Well, actually, it makes sense as a defensive adaptation. If you disguise yourself as a junker, you might get thrown into a trash compactor. But if you But if you disguise yourself as a high-end car, then people probably aren't going to damage it. Unless, of course, you're in Portland in the modern day, but that's neither here nor there. I almost want a like Robot Chicken style joke about that now. Like Optimus Prime goes to Portland as this like really over-designed muscle car, and Antifa comes through and smashes it up to fight the power, quote unquote.
Moving on.
Uh-huh. Bananas in disguise.
Banana.
Back up! Oh, I thought you were boys. You want it? Come and get it.
You want a human here?
Nobody. I ain't even seen nothing. I'm not even seeing anything right now.
So I do have something to say about the designs of like the robots.
Mm-hmm.
They feel a bit weird, like they're like a mix of the Travis Knight design from Bumblebee and also the Michael Bay design.
Yeah, that's why my thought process is this is trying to be a softer reboot than Bumblebee was. They're trying to basically bridge the gap between the two styles, which isn't stupid given that Bumblebee was really good but didn't make a lot of money, and the Transformers movies were dog shit, but they at least made a lot of money. So trying to thread that needle, I guess.
I think the issue I have is more so with Optimus because again they're having him take off his faceplate. It looks good with the faceplate on, but not really without it, you know.
Yeah, in the immortal words of a very, very old, very, very dank internet meme, what's wrong with your face?
It's just like you can emote with his eyes, you know. He doesn't need a face.
Mm-hmm.
Like subtle acting is more important. I think is more important than facial acting. I
mean, ideally you would have both, but apparently we live in a universe that is miserable, and therefore you can't have everything.
I guess I prefer more physical acting than, you know, anything else. But
for me, it depends on the character that the actor is trying to play, I guess.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, anyway.
Hold on. Again, like back to the design, it just some feel a bit weird and off. You know, like I can't really explain it per se. It's just weird to me. I can't describe it. There's something off about them. One or two of them. And I already mentioned Optimus, but yeah. Moving
on. In my head, Dragon Turtle, I was imagining bananas disguising themselves as different other kinds of fruit. Like this whole time, I've been imagining an apple that if you like fold it origami wise turns out to be a banana all along somehow. That's just me.
How do you explain the color, though? How do you explain the color?
Simple, just like with the Autobots having the like metal parts underneath, the red of the apple becomes the interior of the banana when it's in proper banana form.
Anyway, show me banana.
Bananas in disguise.
This is not our war.
Optimus, we must trust each other to protect the whole share.
How big can this guy be?
He eats planets.
Okay, so I think we mentioned that when you and I talked before, we mentioned
the whole skewed priorities thing of having the Beast be introduced in the same movie as you're doing Unicron.
Yeah.
Yeah. You honestly could have made Transformers: The Coming of Unicron its own movie, and it would have made more sense. If the Beasts are your headlining element here, then the Beast should be the main focus.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking. You guys see the new Christopher Robin TV show that has Christopher Robin as a drug addict?
What? The actual hell?
It's first I've heard of it.
I hadn't heard of that. Why is that a thing? How is that a thing? What is that a thing?
Also, speaking of wiki stuff, keep seeing those CC trailers. Any idea if that's going to be good enough? I mean, it's made by the guys who did John Wick, and it just looks like a little fun romp. I'm honestly getting a lot more Bullet Train vibes off of it, which I think is good.
Mm-hmm. I'm somewhat looking forward to the Continental TV show just because I love the freaking Continental and the hospitality politicking. As Dragon Turtle can attest, I have kind of a thing for hospitality politicking. I love hospitality politicking so much.
Isn't it almost traditional to have Unicron having its own dedicated thing? I think so, yeah. But
well, I mean, there's a reason for that. He's basically the Cybertronian Apocalypse in a character. He is to the Transformers franchise what Galactus is to, or Dormammu is to the Marvel universe. And in fact, you could even make the argument that by doing Unicron before the MCU has gotten a chance to do Galactus, they beat them to the punch, kind of.
Right. Yeah, just it feels weird that since it's called Rise of the Beast, you assume it's focusing on the Beast Wars, but they're not even going up against the Predacons.
Yeah, I would have assumed based on the title that some faction of the Beast Autobot, the Beast Wars would, the Maximals would have been the driving force of the plot, but apparently the Autobots and the Maximals are just waiting in the wings for Unicron to show up.
And I did research for this. Apparently, they're not even going against the Predacons, which are the,
the Decepticon equivalents within the Beast mythos.
Yeah. They're going up against the Terrorcons, which is another faction of similar to the Decepticon stuff.
Okay, why? Why did they mix and match?
I have no fucking idea. Although I think the Terrorcons are supposed to be the heralds of Unicron.
Okay, yeah, that does follow actually. But again, that leaves further the question of why didn't you just make a movie that was called Transformers: The Terror of Unicron or something? I personally like the Coming of Unicron to kind of emphasize how he's an unstoppable force of nature for the Cybertronians, but since they are called the Terrorcons and they're supposed to be basically his heralds, you could make a pun and call it Transformers: The Terror of Unicron.
Mm-hmm.
Which does at least sound like a badass title, so fair enough. Oh god.
Anyway. Banana?
Bananas in disguise.
Stop ruining that song.
No. And I'm not ruining it, I'm parodying it.
Anyway. Yeah, okay.
It's so way bigger than a planet.
In the end, everything you cared for will be consumed.
So I have something to say about the music of the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so say we've said a lot about Michael Bay's Transformers and stuff, yeah. But at least with the trailers, they at least had a consistent tone and kind of grander epicness to it.
Yeah, it was obviously all part of the same franchise.
Yeah. And I get this is a reboot and stuff, but comparing this to even like the trailers of Bumblebee,
Mm-hmm.
the music doesn't work for this. It doesn't help heighten anything.
No, not really.
Giant Turtle, how hard is it to do Transformers? I mean, G1 is probably too goofy for people, but you have the Alliance Continuity, IDW comics, the Marvel, Transformers comics, etc. that all have people who like them. Many options, but instead they choose Perpetual Cluster. Okay, so I don't necessarily disagree with you, Giant Turtle, but I think you can take elements from what works of each continuity and make them work together. I think the issue is they never try to do that.
What was the Transformers cartoon from the 2000s where there was like this little girl who was a keeper of a piece of the Allspark?
Transformers animated.
Yeah. They could have easily adapted that as well, but whatever.
Pretty cool. That was pretty cool. I was actually like, I think that was the Transformers I grew up with, to be honest.
Most likely.
Terracons are the sometimes undead Transformers that instead are filled / infected with dark energon, the blood of Unicron. Okay, yeah, so it makes sense why they're here.
Yeah, so yeah, if they're the heralds of Unicron, but again, you could have easily made this movie entirely beast focused and then set up a becoming of Unicron for or the terror of Unicron for later.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird to me. Like this whole, it just feels a bit hollow.
Also, if this is supposed to be a reboot continuity, are you seriously telling me you're doing Unicron as your first big bad for a new reboot? You didn't save him for the capstone of a trilogy or anything? That's stupid.
Honestly, like you don't even like you don't. I said, and I've talked to Dawn about this because I'm rewriting. So okay, so kind of big background here, and I don't because so I feel like an asshole when I bring up like projects I'm working on, but I'm reworking some of the latter movies of the Michael Bay Transformers, like what I call the sequel trilogy, even though there were only 2 movies. And I'm putting Rise of Beast in there. I'm reworking that. But the overarching villains of that, like the quintessons, honestly, dude, the quintessons are such an interesting race and faction of villains to the Transformers because they are the creators of the Transformers. They are they were the slavers of the species. And they have this whole interconnected history with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Why
it also would finally explain how the hell a race of literal machines could exist if you actually show who created them.
To be fair, there's a lot of interpretations that also range into a kind of quasi mystical spiritual thing with like
I know, but still it's that's always been the most normie question I always get from people is how can there be an alien race entirely made of machines? Who made them?
They're made of I wouldn't say they're biological, but they're living machines.
Right, but they're still mechanical is the thing. And that tends to screw with people's heads. But if you showed the quintessons, that would solve the most normie of normie objections.
Okay, so therefore I imagine they're using Unicron like they are using Flashpoint. While they aren't acknowledging the previous movies, they are sort of dismissing them either. So a sort of big bad cap it all
off. Well, but here's the thing. This for whatever it's worth is a soft reboot. So clearly they want to do more with this. Like they want to return to the financial heights of the Michael Bay era and then spin off a bunch of sequels. So again, my question is, if this is supposed to be your soft reboot, starting a new franchise, given that, Bumblebee for whatever reason failed to launch, why would you start with the biggest, baddest one instead of... Honestly, how I would have done it is you do a movie, you do a trilogy of movies, and each movie has its own villain and whatnot, but you have the specter of, the coming of Unicron be Easter eggs throughout the entire trilogy, so that when Unicron shows up, it literally feels like a quasi-apocalyptic inevitability, because that's how Unicron should be treated within the context of the Transformers mythos. He's a planet-eating. He's basically a mechanical version of Galactus. He should be treated like a long prophesied apocalypse. But never mind.
Right, but yeah. Either way, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Banana.
Bananas in disguise.
Maybe there's another way to save our home.
You've never faced anything like this. Let them come.
As usual, the best thing about these movies is the voice actor for Optimus Prime. I hope to God he's in at least one good version of this before he dies. Because if we don't get a good Transformers movie until after he passes away, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm still mad that we never got a Batman Beyond starring Kevin Conroy. But whatever.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't feel like it's kind of earned, to be honest. Either.
Mm-hmm.
So
again, they're trying to piggyback off the previous movies while still simultaneously also launching a new franchise, and yet they jumped right to Unicron. Come to think of it, is there anything bigger or more apocalyptic than Unicron in the Transformers setting? I can't think of one.
in the IDW continuity, I believe there is a dimension full of Terrorcons. There's also the Broken Mirror, or Shattered Glass dimension, which is the Autobots are the bad guys and Decepticons are the good guys.
Right, but I'm talking about in terms of scale. Is there a bigger baddie than Unicron as far as the Cybertronians are concerned?
I mean, again,
like a more cosmic threat.
Again, there is like I said, there is a dead universe, antimatter universe that's trying to break in and destroy all life throughout the dimension of the Transformers.
So basically, the Transformers equivalent of the Necrons from 40K.
I would say, I don't know. Complicated. There's so many different things. Because, ironically enough, the Transformers universe is very vast. Even though not many people know that.
Mm-hmm. But what I mean is that there's nothing in a linear progression that's another step up to Unicron. You have to go sideways or across things to get to something that would be on par with Unicron.
Yeah.
Which is why this is a really stupid decision to try to start your new franchise on the biggest baddest franchise or the biggest baddie in the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's not even titled The Terror of Unicron or The Coming of Unicron or anything. It's titled Rise of Beasts, and the beasts are basically an afterthought now.
Apparently Eldritch Gods are even in it. That's a strange though.
Yeah, that wouldn't it wouldn't surprise me. I just couldn't think off the top of my head of anything that is in a linear fashion bigger than Unicron.
Yeah, weird. Alright, anyway, shall we?
Yeah. Bananas in disguise.
Banana. Yeah, I feel nothing with this. Just
Also, shouldn't the Rise of Beasts be bigger and more like animal themed? Even the title is forgetting that it's supposed to be primarily about the beasts.
I don't get it, man. I don't know. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, guess that's
well, it's on like 10 more seconds, so I want
all right.
to, yeah.
Bananas in disguise.
Yo, Noah, take the wheel. Yeah, baby!
Yeah, I just,
Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
I suppose that's where we call it for now.
I mean, I have like some closing thoughts on it. It's like, again, it feels like they're trying, how to put this? It feels like
They don't know what direction they're going in.
that, and also it feels like they're trying to, how do I put it? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find the words here. It feels like this should be some type of in-game for the Transformers franchise, like movie franchise.
But it's unfortunately never been that well put together. So.
But yeah, like it hasn't been built up to it, really.
It's basically trying to do an endgame style finale on the first go, which again leads me to the question of, in a linear, would be somewhat acceptable to the normies fashion, is there a bigger baddie than Unicron they could use after this that isn't going to feel absurd and forced? Because I can't think of one. To me, Unicron, like I say, Unicron should be treated like the Cybertronian apocalypse, like the long prophesied end of all Cybertronians.
But yeah, also like I said earlier, so the Kid Yeager series for the Transformers movies, I'm working on. Say we will about the first trilogy of movies, they at least were consistent and had narrative through line, as crappy as they were, right?
Mm.
I will actually argue that the sequel movies, like the sequel series, had a lot more interesting concepts and ideas.
The ones that star Mark Wahlberg, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for the record, I am recasting Mark Wahlberg, who plays Kate Yeager in those movies, just because I think there is a better actor that could play that character, especially the direction I'm going with him. But yeah, it's just like I want to see the Beast Wars. Unicron just feels weirdly tacked on,
trilogy and make him the capstone for the trilogy, and like throw in nods to him being on the horizon the whole time, so it's built up like an apocalyptic event.
Yeah, it's super weird. Anyway, we are going to call it there, folks. So with that, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.